I know what you're thinking. Rusty, that title is clickbait bullshit. Well, give me 45 minutes to possibly well over an hour, and you might just change your mind. Here's the interview that started my obsession with today's topic.
I don't think we can ever overestimate the influence of eschatology in American politics.
Exactly.
So I'll give an example where about a quarter of Americans are evangelicals, and a lot of them are Christian Zionists. So they believe that Israel is crucial, the linchpin to achieving God's plan and the return of Jesus. And so a very prominent figure that you probably know very well is John Hagee, who runs something called the Christians United for Israel. It's 7 million members. And these are the people who are financing a lot of the conflict in the Middle East, in Israel, because they're the ones who are funding West Bank settlements. And so Christian Zionism, it is an extremely powerful political force in America. So your question is, how did this happen?
Okay, really quick, I want to jump into and break down a couple of things he said. Part of the reason why I got obsessed with this is because he just throws a ton of things out in a very short amount of time. And I literally had to go through and copy the transcript and paste it into a Google document and work with Claude and sort of go through and just research all these individual things because he just throws so much out there. So he mentioned Christian Zionism. I've heard of it, don't really know what it means. I know it's something about people in America really being super supportive of Israel. All right, so the AI overview. Christian Zionism is a theological and political belief among some Christians, primarily evangelicals, that the modern state of Israel is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, and that supporting it is a spiritual duty. We're going to get back to this, fulfillment of biblical prophecy, because that actually is kind of the central theme of what we're going to talk about today. All right, so that was Christian Zionism. Here's the other thing he talked about. Christians United for Israel. Hang on, let me go to the home page. Now, I noticed earlier when I was scrolling through this, now obviously this is a very politically charged religious I don't know, organization. I'm not sure what you call this. Because on their website, they have all these like White House press conferences, and Trump agrees to double-sided ceasefire, and something about the Pope being viral but false. I guess we should look into that at some point. But it says on the interview he said 7 million, and somewhere in here I saw they're claiming 10 million. But let's go to the about, and let's see, leadership. And this guy here, Pastor John Hagee, that's who he was referencing. And I don't honestly know much about him other than what I'm seeing right here. I've heard of him in the past, and he's in charge of a gigantic evangelical church. And obviously, if he's in charge of Christians United for Israel, we could call him a Christian Zionist. I guess that'd be safe. I don't think he would mind if we said that. So that was Christian Zionism and Christians United.
And
Yes.
The issue is that this is a plan that has been in motion for centuries, and it's a very complicated history, but it involves different religious groups among the Jews, Septime Frankists, Shabbat Lubavitch, which you've talked about, but it also involves the Freemasons, the Knights Templars, the Rosicrucians. It involves the Jesuits.
Oh, and there it is. This actually, honestly, what he just said right there, the Knights Templar, the Jesuits, the Rosicrucians, that's what got me. That's why I can't stop watching this, because whether he's right or wrong, he's on a gigantic YouTube channel with Tucker Carlson, whether you love him or hate him, and he's just nodding along like, yeah, this is normal. This is totally cool. And it's just like, oh, could this possibly be true? This is like my dream come true, because of course, it makes me think of this. Morning.
We've already gone down another 20 feet. So at this point, the can is down to 170. And that's great.
In the money.
That is great. Hard hat guy. It's all about slam and can, guys. I mean, I don't know if I could make that any more clear. It's all about slam and can.
Rick and other members of the team monitor the excavation of the Peacock 1 caisson.
I noticed we're getting full buckets as well, which is good.
Full buckets? Oh, is that Gary Drayton? We're getting full buckets and we might just pull out a top pocket find. I don't care how much my kids make fun of me for being in love with this show. Just watching that clip right there makes me love it even more. And I'm telling you, when I'm done recording this episode, I will be watching me some more Oak Island. Okay, Gary, I would love to stay and hang out and listen to all of your antics and watch you walk around with a metal detector. But sadly, we've got some politics to talk about. All right, I'm going to back it up a little bit because I cut him off. I'm going to start off with how did this happen? So your question is, how did this happen? Well, let's just see.
How did this happen? And
Yes.
the issue is that this is a plan that has been in motion for centuries, and it's a very complicated history, but it involves different religious groups among the Jews, Septime Frankists, Shabbat Lubavitch, which you've talked about, but also it involves the Freemasons, the Knights Templars, the Rosicrucians. It involves the Jesuits. So you have these different secret societies, different religious organizations working together through the centuries to achieve this plan for the end of the world, which heralds the Messianic age. Okay, and there are different components of this plan, but the basic components are: one is the
Okay. Whew. Sorry, Professor, to cut you off. This is where he gets into the meat and potatoes. So we've covered the secret societies and the evangelical Christian Zionist movement of today, and now he's going to go sort of like through the whole series of prophecies, or I don't know, like the steps to this coming true. And so, yes, sorry I paused you, but this is going to be the meat and potatoes that we dig into.
creation of the nation state of Israel, which happened in 1948. And then you need to have the building of the third temple, which requires the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is actually which could happen during this war, given what we've seen so far. So the Israelis have closed off the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as other religious sites like the Church of Holy Sepulchre, to tourists these past few days. There's rumors that for the past 2 years, the Israelis have been conducting these archaeological digs under the Al-Aqsa Mosque to basically destroy the foundations of the mosque, so that they can conduct a controlled demolition of the mosque and blame it on a missile strike from the Iranians. And there's actually talk among the Israelis of using this plan to ignite a war between the Arabs and the Persians. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque needs to be destroyed for the third temple. They also talk about this war of Gog and Magog between Israel and the entire world. Then the coming of the Jewish Messiah, the creation of the Greater Israel Project, the return of all Jews from the diaspora. So there are different components to.
Okay, I'm gonna pause him there. That is where we launch into our episode. All right, so before we get started with breaking that all down, who is this guy? This is Professor Jiang Jiang, he's not actually a professor. He teaches high school. He was born in China. His family immigrated to Canada when he was 6. He got a scholarship to Yale, and he got a degree in English literature in 1999. He worked as a freelance journalist. He was arrested and deported from China in 2002 while filming an undercover PBS documentary on the labor movement. He now teaches in a high school in Beijing, uses a VPN to access YouTube because it's banned there. And he has a YouTube channel, Predictive History, a couple of million subscribers. Okay, what has made him stand out? I mean, it's good content. I watched some of his lectures. But what made him stand out, and I think what got him probably featured on the Tucker Carlson show or network or whatever, is that he made a few different predictions back in 2024, and 2 of the 3 have already come true. And so let's jump over to that. He said in May of 2024, Trump's going to win the 2024 election. Trump is going to start a war with Iran, and the U.S. will lose that war. Ew, it's ominous. He's 2 for 3 so far, and I don't know, the whole war thing, we talked about it last week. Petrodollar, Strait of Hormuz, you really should check out the episode. It's long and drawn out and winding, and I take a bunch of weird turns, and it probably doesn't make any sense at all. But luckily, some people watched it because I got totally trolled in the comments. Here's the overview. These are the 5 main things that he talked about in the interview. Number 1 is the Greater Israel Project. Number 2 is the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I apologize for anybody who can actually pronounce these things. I apologize in advance because I'm going to struggle today. Number 3, the War of Gog and Magog. Basically, Israel versus the world. Number 4, the coming of the Jewish Messiah with a twist. And number 5, Jewish people return from the diaspora, the Messianic age begins. I forgot to look this up, but as far as I know, that basically just means the fact that a lot of Jewish people are scattered all over the world, and this is going to be that, and that's the diaspora, and them coming back is going to be returning from that. Well, I made that look pretty easy. All right, the Greater Israel Project. Now, I've actually got an interview to show you about that, and it's kind of weird. It's also on Tucker. Don't worry, I actually watch a lot more YouTube channels than just Tucker, but man, lately he's just been putting out the bangers because he's just not afraid. He just has like a no fucks sort of a take on this whole thing. So he just has all these crazy interviews. Maybe they're crazy, maybe they're genius. I don't know. But he interviewed Mike Huckabee, and that was my first big introduction to the Greater Israel Project. And actually, you know what? It might be worth it before we do that to give a little bit of context, because it'll make more sense to what Mike Huckabee is saying. This is a map of the Greater Israel Project. Now, this is from the Bible, and I'm not going to remember all the details of this, but you'll hear it in the interview. But this is basically a map that shows how big the country or the state, I don't know how to call it, of Israel would be if it were drawn along biblical boundaries. Okay, so Israel is very small, and it's in the middle here somewhere, right on the coast, but it's huge according to the Bible, and it goes into Egypt, it goes into Saudi Arabia, covers Jordan completely, all the way to basically Baghdad, Syria, up into Turkey. And so that's what the Greater Israel Project is referring to, and you'll hear that in the interview. So let's jump into the interview with the actually the ambassador, the United States ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee.
Appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be, I mean,
Not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the
it
point.
would be a lot of
I'm not sure it'd go that far, but it would be pretty big.
places that are now countries that
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose.
Ooh, did I mention this guy's a Baptist preacher? No offense to any Baptist preachers out there, but he is also the ambassador, the United States ambassador to Israel. And he's kind of saying, or at least it sounds like at this point, saying that all those sovereign nations might just have to give up their land so that Israel can become like a gazillion times bigger than it is. Maybe I'm misreading this. Let's hear him out.
We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started
I'm
on
not
this.
going to let you off on this because you have
Go
said
ahead.
it 3 times
Okay.
that God gave this land
Yeah.
to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times.
Mhm.
And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't
Do
think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all
they don't
of
want to
Jordan?
take it over. That they're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel
That's crazy. It would be fine if they took it all. Well, that didn't go over so well, as you can imagine. Regardless of your views on religion or Baptist preachers, there was quite the oops! Don't look at that. That's a spoiler. There was quite the outcry, as you can imagine, because, lots of people that say live in other countries around there who like their countries didn't like the idea of them no longer being a country because Mike Huckabee said that they didn't have a right to. So this is NBC News. It would be fine if they took it all, but I don't think that's what we're talking about here today. Huckabee told podcaster Tucker Carlson. Let's see. The two discuss his Christian Zionist beliefs and interpretations of the Old Testament regarding land promised to Abraham's descendants, stretching across multiple modern-day countries. Yeah, I didn't play it for you, but that interview is super long, and I highly recommend it because they go through and talk about a lot of stuff that, like, if God gave the... Like if God gave the land of Israel to his people, well, then how do you define his people? And stuff I'd never even thought about. But Tucker kind of pressed him repeatedly. So he's like, well, wait a minute. Being Jewish is, you can be born Jewish, so it's like an ethnicity, but you could also convert religiously to being Jewish. So then basically what counts? Is it like genetic, or is it a belief system? And it's stuff I'd never even heard of or thought of. And so I would highly recommend the interview because it's going to kind of like open your eyes to like a whole different way of thinking about stuff. But this here is just basically the reaction. His comments drew swift condemnation from across the region. A joint statement from the foreign ministries of over a dozen Arab and Muslim nations, including U.S. allies Qatar and Saudi Arabia expressed their strong condemnation and profound concern regarding his comments, affirming their categorical rejection of such dangerous and inflammatory remarks. These statements directly contradict the vision put forward by U.S. President Donald J. Trump, as well as the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. Now, I'm honestly not sure. Well, I don't know. I guess the Gaza conflict, and I would need to do a ton of research to understand that, but I guess that's essentially a land dispute also. So I don't know. Maybe that factors into this whole thing too. The League of Arab States, which includes all Arab states in the Middle East and North Africa, called his comments extremist and lacking any sound basis. So that's the Greater Israel Project. So it's basically about land, and it's about land promised to the Jewish people by God a long time ago in the Old Testament. So that actually dovetails really nicely to the next point about the mosque that I mentioned. I think it was point number 2. So let's just review this really quick. The Greater Israel Project, is realized. Why did I say that? The land from the Nile to the Euphrates comes under the control of Israel, basically, and it's all from Genesis 15. We saw the Huckabee interview, and then of course the outcry. All right, now number 2. The destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So I've heard of this before, and I really had no idea, honestly, what they were talking about, because I don't really know much about that area, that region, and especially like into the nuanced details. That's why we're here. So I actually, I did what everybody does, and I Googled it, and what's hilarious to me is that on Google, it actually pops up, which kind of makes sense, but it pops up like with reviews and everything. So it gets good news if you're thinking about visiting. It gets 4.8 stars on Google with 18,165 Google reviews. All right, it's a mosque in Jerusalem. So I haven't actually, directions probably wouldn't do us much good. Wikipedia, why not? I'll just click on that. We'll see what Wikipedia says. Wow, that is very confusing looking. No. Okay. Let's just do. Here's a good article I found on the BBC, thebbc.com, and this sort of gives a map. This is actually an old article from a couple of years ago, but the map I thought was good, and you can see the Dome of the Rock, and I can't tell how big this is. Maybe a couple of 100 yards away, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And so it's on this big, Temple Mount. It's the Haram al-Sharif. It's a sort of a big compound, and you can sort of see how it all is so close together. And this is basically the super most important, holiest of holy places for, I think, lots of different religions, but also especially for the Jewish people and also Muslim people. Because if you've been to Sunday school, then pretty much all the biggest stories that you heard, all the wild and crazy stories from the Bible took place right here, right on the Dome of the Rock. That is pretty much blowing my mind. And so now we need to click over and talk about the significance. Now, one of the claims he had was that the destruction of this mosque had to occur in order for them to build the third temple, and that's part of the prophecy. Okay, and so let's go back in time a little bit, because this is really where the Knights Templar comes in. All right, so the Knights Templar, here's a background. Founded in Jerusalem around 1119 AD as a public Pope-sanctioned military order during the Crusades. Their whole purpose was controlling the Holy Land, and specifically the Temple Mount. Let me see if I can find that. I'm going to click through all these things Oh, boom, the Temple Mount right here. So the Knights Templar, one of their sole purposes was to control this area. They literally set up a headquarters there. They became enormously powerful, essentially running the medieval banking system across Europe. In 1312, the King of France had the order dissolved, their leaders arrested, tortured, and executed. Jesus. The mythology that exploded after their suppression is that surviving Templars went underground and kept operating in secret. I think we know where they
The
went.
more we go through, the more chance we got finding treasure.
Finding treasure. Gary Drayton's going to find their treasure because they went to Oak Island. We all know this, and they're going to find it. They're going to find it really, really soon. All right. They're not, let's see. So basically the Knights Templars essentially turned into the Freemasons. All right. This is the most legitimate and well documented of the three because he mentions the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, and the Rosicrucians. And so the Freemasons emerged publicly in the early 1700s in Britain, though it claims much older roots going back to the medieval stonemasons guilds, both in its rituals and mythology. Actually, my grandfather was a Freemason, and when he died, he had a Masonic ritual funeral. And it was very, very interesting. It was very interesting. I don't even know, don't even know like how to describe it. But when I saw the whole Freemason thing, I was like, oh, interesting. I have kind of a weird sort of family connection to that. All right, and I guess the Freemasons also built America. All right, so let's see. They claim a heritage all the way back to the Solomon's Temple itself. The building of Solomon's Temple is literally the central allegory of Freemasonry. Okay, let's see. So one of his claims is that there's going to be the destruction of that mosque in order to build a third temple, and he says that they're going to do it as like a false flag operation because he claims that they're digging underneath that temple right now and that they're going to basically do a controlled demolition to bring it down and then basically blame it on Iran, like a missile strike. And I don't know. That's a pretty bold claim. So let's see. Could there be any truth to that? So let me just scroll to that part. Ooh, here we go. The destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. All right, so here is a story from the New Arab. Israel accelerating excavations under Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque. Oh, I saw this earlier when I was doing the research. That is such an incredibly beautiful picture. That's it. Okay, the Al-Quds International Institution estimates that there are at least 64 excavations and tunnels being carried out under the mosque. Israel is accelerating excavations around the mosque in occupied Jerusalem, extending from the Al-Barak Plaza in the west through to I can't even say these names, basically lots of excavations. They began around 9 months ago and are being carried out under the tight measures that prevent local Palestinians from knowing the details. The secret tunnel, which is approximately 550 meters long, threatens to destroy Islamic, Canaanite, and Roman archaeological sites, as Israeli authorities attempt to whitewash the history of the area with biblical museums. Okay, that's their claim. So allegedly, now the professor, Jiang, he claims that they're tunneling underneath so they can do a controlled demolition. And then, of course, we see, according to this news source, that they are doing excavations. Okay, so let's see. This is a counter claim. Wow. Countering item 7. Oh, man, why is this website? This is called unwatch.org, but it's like all the text is like on top of each other. It doesn't. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Wow, this stuff is so heavy. Claim 22. I don't know. Oh, hang on. This might be it. Let's see if it actually goes to something. Claim 29. Israel violates Muslim holy sites by excavating under Al-Aqsa Mosque. I can't read any of it. Damn. Well, I was trying to give like a counterpoint. Let's see. Israel continues with its daily violations in addition to excavations under the mosque. The false charge that Israel is conducting excavations and activities that threaten the very foundations of the mosque has been deployed on many occasions by the Palestinians to incite their own people as well as the wider Muslim world. Okay, apparently this charge was made in 2006 when Muslim leaders accused Israel of digging underneath the mosque. Let's see. This is so hard to read. Are you seeing this? Like, is this somehow me? Am I doing this wrong? I don't know. But basically, from what I can tell, basically is that this is just basically the counterpoint saying it's not happening, saying that it's not happening, and and that Israel would never do that. I don't know what's true. But that's what the professor is talking about, or the high school teacher is talking about, is the destruction of that mosque in order to build the third temple. Now we already talked about how important that land is, and really it's the land that is the entire. It's all about who occupies the land, who controls the land, and what is built there. Number 3, the War of Gog and Magog. Not something I've ever heard of before, but it does tie into some very interesting and recent news out of the U.S. So let's scroll down to this. The War of Gog and Magog is basically Israel versus the entire world. A massive end times war described in Ezekiel 38 through 39. And then Jiang is suggesting the current Iran war is either the beginning of this or the setup for it. Okay, now here is where... Oops, I think I already had that open. Now I know what you're thinking, because it's what I was thinking. Like, what a crazy claim that he's thinking that Israel is, or that we and Israel are starting this war with Iran to basically start Armageddon. That's ridiculous. No one would think that. That's only crazy people would say that. Well, you wish that only crazy people would say that, because here's a story. This is Jonathan Larson. This is Substack, but these articles are all over the internet. I'll read it for you. A combat unit commander told non-commissioned officers at a briefing Monday that the Iran war was part of God's plan and that President Donald Trump was anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth. Huh. Okay. So that's fucking crazy. From Saturday morning through Monday night, more than 110 similar complaints about commanders in every branch of the military have been logged by the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. The complaints came from more than 40 different units spread across at least 30 military installations. The MRFF is keeping the complainants anonymous to prevent retribution by the Defense Department. The Pentagon did not immediately respond to my request for comment. Wow. One complainant identified themselves as a non-commissioned officer in a unit currently outside the Iran combat zone, but in ready support status. Deployable at any time, the NCO said that there were Christian and emailed... the NCO said they were Christian and emailed the MRFF on behalf of 15 troops, including 11 Christians, 1 Muslim, and 1 Jew. The NCO wrote that their commander urged us to tell our troops that this was all part of God's divine plan And he specifically referenced numerous citations out of the book of Revelation referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. Could you imagine? These guys are sitting outside the Iran combat zone. I don't know what that means exactly. So they're out there. They're very close. They're somewhere in the region, and at any time, politicians could decide to send them in there to risk their lives for some purpose, and they're being told, "Don't worry, we're just doing this so we can fucking kick off Armageddon." So I guess my title and thumbnail don't sound so crazy after all. So this would be the war of Gog and Magog, and this is also what Jiang talks about in the interview. It might have been before that, but he was saying that basically he was saying in Israel, but I mean we can obviously say that extends to America also, that they're not the policymakers, the politicians and stuff. They're not really operating out of logic anymore because they literally think that these events are going to spark Armageddon and the return of the Messiah. And so, if really bad things happen, if this thing gets really out of control, it's okay because the Messiah is going to come back and save us all. And I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, we're literally seeing that. It's coming down. I mean, that doesn't happen like locally. That's not a grassroots thing in the military. That's coming down from on high. You have what did he say? Let's jump over there. How many complaints were there? The complaints came from more than 40 different units spread across at least 30 military installations. All right, so there's no way that's just a handful of commanders who just happen to be like really, really religious. That to me sounds like it's coming down from on high. And I think there's other rhetoric that is being talked about from on high. Let's see. This guy has a screenshot of Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, but of course he's calling himself the Secretary of War right now. This is, I guess, from a prayer breakfast. This just says he's at a Fellowship Foundation's prayer breakfast, falsely claimed that America was founded as a Christian nation. I don't know. It's a screen grab from C-SPAN. I don't know. I don't know the backstory on that one. Now we move on to the return of the Messiah. And this is where the twist comes in. And I'm going to read you sort of the summary that I came up with using Claude, because I read a bunch of different articles and it really confused me. But then it made sense once I got to this. All right, so the coming of the Jewish Messiah plus the return of Jews from the diaspora after the existential crisis, that's the war with everybody. And I guess that's what our military commanders think that we're sparking. We're lighting the signal fires of Armageddon. After God intervenes to save Israel, the Messiah arrives and all Jews return from around the world to Israel. The Messianic age begins. All right, so this is where the rub is, and it's kind of weird because we covered John Hagee, and I forget the name of the Christians United for Israel or something like that, huge organization. So you have Christian Zionists who believe that basically Jesus came back and died on the cross for their sins, and that and they want to usher the age where he returns victorious. Well, you have Jewish people who don't believe that the Jesus that died on the cross, that if you grew up in America going to Sunday school, that Jesus you think of, they don't believe that. They want to bring back the Jesus that hasn't come back yet. And so it's two different things. And so let me get into this really quick because it's kind of interesting. So the Jewish messianic view, the Messiah hasn't come yet. He is a figure, he is a future figure, a human leader descended from King David who will arrive during a time of great crisis, save the Jewish people, rebuild the temple, gather all Jews back to Israel, and usher in an era of peace and divine rule centered on Jerusalem. No supernatural resurrection, no second coming, just the first and only arrival of the promised Redeemer. And so again, all these prophecies that he's talking about in the interview, as far as the creation of the state of Israel, and then you have the destruction of that mosque, which, like, we can't really, you can't really determine what's happening and what's not. He claims there's tunnels being dug, but that'd be a big thing, and that'd be a big part of it. And then the war of Gog and Magog, which our own military thinks that they're getting ready to kick off in Iran. And then that basically goes through and sparks Armageddon and triggers the return of the Messiah. Now, the rub is this. The Christian Zionist view is a little bit different. They view Jesus of Nazareth, like I just said, he already was the Messiah. His first coming already happened 2,000 years ago. What they're waiting for is his return. And when he comes back, he lands in Jerusalem, defeats the forces of evil at Armageddon, and establishes his kingdom on earth. Christians get raptured to heaven. Jesus reigns. End of story. I'm not going to scroll down yet. It just says, here's where it gets truly bizarre. Okay, both groups need the exact same events to happen. Israel existing, which it does. The Temple Mount is secured. The third temple is built. Massive war centered on Jerusalem. They're literally working towards the same checklist. But when that figure actually shows up in Jerusalem, Jews will see him as their long-awaited Messiah arriving for the first time. Christians will recognize him as Jesus returning for the second time. That doesn't seem like a very big deal yet. Like, well, maybe he was here before, maybe he wasn't. Well, it actually gets kind of a little bit weirder than that. We're gonna get there. In Christian theology, I love this. This is my research with Claude. If you're not using AI to make your life easier, you're just missing out. And literally, I have these projects set up to help me with this research, and he literally puts stuff like this in here. And here's the kicker that's worth saying out loud on camera. Thanks, Claude. In Christian theology, a figure who shows up claiming to be the Messiah, who has never come before during the end times, is literally the definition of the Antichrist. That's the great deception described in Revelation. Okay, that could be problematic. Okay, so these two groups are co-funding and co-executing the same plan, celebrating the same milestones, and at the finish line, they will be looking at the same person and seeing completely opposite things. One group's savior is the other group's antichrist, depending on which theology you're running. Well, that could be a problem. Number 5, I guess it turns out we've already covered number 5, kind of already within the earlier points. Let me click over to it. I had number 5, Jewish people return from the diaspora. The Messianic age begins. Pretty much, I think we covered that in the War of Gog and Magog. This isn't necessarily the exact order that I think people believe it will happen, but basically, maybe number 4 and number 5 kind of happened at the same time. Maybe the coming of the Messiah, maybe when Jesus comes back or comes for the first time, depending on what you believe, that's when the Jewish people will return from the diaspora. I don't know. So I guess there's not really a whole section on that one because we kind of already covered it. There you have it. I don't know if any of that stuff is true, and I don't know what you think about it. You can tell me in the comments what you think about it. I've done a ton of research on this. I've spent probably 2 weeks reading articles and watching YouTube videos and interviews, and I watched that one interview over and over again, just trying to wrap my mind around it. And honestly, even going through it now, recording this episode, I think I'm kind of like more lost than I was to begin with, and I honestly have no idea what I believe. in this. Some of those things are absolutely true. The articles about our military commanders, I mean, that's legit. You can look that up. There's a whole organization that you can go to when you're in the military and you have like a religious freedom issue. So those complaints are true. You know, the excavation under the mosque, I don't know. I guess I would need to dig into that more. But in definitely you have people, you know, talking about this. You have a lot of high level people talking about Armageddon and this, that, and the other, and it's like, it's kind of scary. So let me know what you think. Thank you for your time. And next week it's going to be cool. I'm going to think of something cool. Probably going to change gears a little bit because this has kind of been overwhelming. And yeah, till then,